Leland Vittert joining me now. Of course, Leland spent years as a foreign correspondent, including time in Kyiv and in Ukraine, rather. How soon could the capital city of Kyiv fall?
Hours, conceivably. You know, the idea that once the Russians are able to encircle Kyiv, they already have the airport. You're talking about hours. You talked to Joe Fetterman, an old friend of mine from the Middle East days, earlier, doing some incredibly brave reporting inside of Kyiv. The Russian battle plan is unfolded pretty much the way everybody thought it would. And that's what is most scary, is that the Ukrainian resistance, while brave, is just falling apart. And you heard Joe talk about this concept that they were trying to get Ukrainian citizens to take up arms in an insurgency war against Russia. And there was an order for Ukrainians to pull out Molotov cocktails and start making them. Molotov cocktails were something used, I guess, during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. They were used a lot in the Middle East when I was there. They work well in urban environments against an occupying force. They really don't do much against, columns of Russian T-72 tanks rolling down the main highways into the capital city.
What is at stake if Russia's military does take control of Ukraine's capital? What does that mean?
I don't think it's really a question of if, but when. What is at stake is that for the first time since the 1940s, the United States is no longer writing the rules of how the world operates, and that makes the world a much more dangerous place. Cold War 2.0 has started. World War II, started just this way with Hitler invading Czechoslovakia. And if you look at the way Hitler talked about Czechoslovakia and the way Hitler came to power and the way Hitler talked about uniting the fatherland of Germany and avenging World War I, it is the exact same language, it's the exact same justifications that Vladimir Putin is now using to justify going into Ukraine. And Vladimir Putin has said time and time and time again that he does not view stopping at Ukraine as his end goal. He's talked about reuniting the greater Soviet Union. That includes Poland, that includes the Baltic states that are now members of NATO. So we underestimate Putin, or we don't listen to Putin at our own peril. Remember, this is a guy who just a week and a half ago was saying he was pulling all of his troops off the border because the exercise was over. The world may or may not have time. That's sort of the discussion in the foreign policy world right now that I'm listening to. Is Chamberlain at Munich and the famous appeasement of Hitler already happened? Is letting Hitler take Ukraine the appeasement of Putin that we will all come back to remember and regret?
Remember and regret. Emphasis on the second word there. Yes, defending motherland Russia seems to be his primary objective. And also, as he said multiple times, including at a brief statement on Thursday, that he is concerned about the security of Russia.
Yeah, no, he said a lot of things, right? And it's really, really great KGB propaganda. He's concerned about the security of Vladimir Putin. There is not a lot of longevity for retired Russian presidents, especially a despot and dictator like Vladimir Putin, who is so hated and has ruined the lives of so many and imprisoned and killed so many of his fellow countrymen. He's a professional grievance man, and the only way that he can justify war to his own people is to say, I am defending Russia. If you listen and read his speeches, he's spinning this as somehow Ukraine was going to invade Russia and NATO was going to take the side of Ukraine. Therefore, I had to invade Ukraine. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's no different than some of the justifications that Hitler used. It's a lot of the same kind of bizarre justifications for war that Saddam Hussein used against Kuwait. It doesn't keep him from saying it. But as journalists, at some point, we have to call a spade a spade. And even though Vladimir Putin is saying it, we have to acknowledge that it's simply just not true.
And
it's not really real either. And to sort of give it credence as though, well, he could have legitimate security concerns is bizarre. Now, what's even more bizarre is what's happening domestically, politically. And it's what we're going to get into tonight. The Conservative Political Action Committee, CPAC, which is the big coming out party, if you will, debutante ball for presidential candidates for 2024, there's a lot of candidates down there and a lot of Republicans who are echoing some of Putin's talking points and saying, yes, he did have legitimate security concerns, and we shouldn't really worry about Ukraine, which has some really scary hallmarks to Charles Lindbergh and the America First movement, which back in the late 1930s and 1940s said the very same thing about Adolf Hitler. We know it was just another year until Pearl Harbor and World War II.
Well, that could be a whole other topic that we could speak on for another 5 or 7 minutes, but we're out of time. Thank you, Leland. I know a lot of demonstrations have been happening in Russia as Russians are saying they are against this war. You can watch On Balance and Leland's conversation tonight and every weeknight on NewsNation. It starts at 7 Eastern, 6 o'clock Central Time. Still ahead. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click on the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.